Hello and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show, the only podcast in real estate investing that teaches what you need to know to find and flip deals right now. Wow. Break free the chains that are holding you back and join us on this episode with Jason Lucchesi.
Hey, what's up? It's Jason Lucchesi and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show. I am super excited that you are here with us today. We're going to be covering some great stuff in other markets, how to get wholesaling done, not just here in the States, but also in the country. So for some of you out there that are Canadian listeners, well, I've got a really great friend of mine that is in Canada. He's doing some great things. I'd like to introduce you to him. I met him in June of 2018 at a mastermind, and this dude is absolutely crushing it with his wholesaling in Canada when everybody else in Canada is always coming up with an excuse on why they're not doing business. But this guy is just absolutely demolishing everything that everybody is saying that can't be done. And here he is, Ben Muresan. And I know
what's going on?
He's got one of those special last names. He told me how to do it in the Canadian voice. Let's hear it in the Canadian voice, Ben.
So if you want to be legit, you can call it Muresan. You got to roll those R's because we drink a lot of Tim Hortons coffee. So it's like roll up the ring to win, right? So if you can't do that, Ben Muresan, or they call me humble wholesaler. Yeah, good to be here, man. Thanks for having me, Jason.
No, man, I'm glad that you're here. Ben's one of those guys that stood out right away when we were at the mastermind there with our good friend Mark Evans.
Yes,
and
sir.
You know, right away he was like, "Hey, dude, how can I be a guest on your show?" And I'm like, "Dude, I want you to be a guest on the show, so let's get this thing going." And then we took a little bit of a break, and now we're back, and I'm bringing as many folks as possible that are actually doing the business that could share with you some of the things that are working in their area. And Ben, you're mainly focusing on stuff in Canada, right?
Yeah, basically all Canada. So I don't do anything in the stateside at this point, but yeah, we're just crushing the Canadian market. There's just so many cool opportunities here, man.
No, that's awesome, dude. So tell me why, like, how did you get started in real estate? Like, how old were you? What made you decide real estate? You know, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, cool. So I'll just give you a little backstory. So I was born in Romania, right? I'm 33 years old. I was born in Romania during the era of communism, just before they decapitated our communist dictator.
Oh,
and
wow.
my dad is actually a minister, so I'm the oldest of 9 children, right? So what happened was I was born in Romania, totally different country, different atmosphere. You couldn't practice freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of a lot of things. So we actually fled during just before that communist revolution happened. We fled on foot, actually,
Wow.
to Austria, where we landed as refugees. So we spent about a year and a half in a refugee camp where,
Wow.
so there was about 5 of us at the time, 2 of which had to be left back home in Romania because my parents physically couldn't carry the other ones.
Oh my
so
gosh.
3 of us landed in a refugee camp. We were there for about a year and a half, which was crazy because there was no kids in the refugee camp. It was usually men, like younger men fleeing the country, trying to make a life for themselves. So the fact that our whole family fled was just crazy. My parents tell the story. It's like a movie. So we landed there in a refugee camp. My dad just tried to figure out whatever he could. He was an electrician back home. He's also a minister back home. So one of my sisters was born in the refugee camp.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, fast forward a few years later, about a year and a half later, we had an uncle here in Canada who actually sponsored us to come to Canada. And so we basically came to Canada, came right to Windsor. I had 3 more siblings. So the oldest of 9 children, refugees, come from another country. So I am the most blessed, the most humble. That's why I go by humble. I think person you're going to find, because I recognize how much opportunity this country and the U.S. has. And anybody who's not taking advantage of it, for me, just seems like a waste. Like I have so many cousins that would take your place. So there's no room for complaining, for anything. So I think I just always, as a result of that upbringing and circumstance, I just always had a drive to do something significant with my life. So for me, it was about having a greater calling. So I always ask myself, why? What is your purpose? What are you doing in life? So growing up, I wasn't in business. I was actually a musician. I wanted to be a jazz piano player because I played instruments my whole life. So I played piano, guitar. I was in all the bands in high school. So I actually went to university for a couple of years and studied the trumpet. which was interesting enough. Halfway through that, I realized I didn't really, I didn't want to teach music, and that was a school that I had gone to. So I basically just dropped out. Always had a passion for real estate and doing something. So basically, I bought every course under the sun that you could find. Right, I went to all the rich dads. I went to all the seminars. I went to the 3 days. I did all kinds of stuff to try to figure out this business. I ended up buying 3 little duplexes, which was cool, kind of no money down deals. Yeah. I took some strategies from the US courses, and some of my realtor buddies in Canada like, well, you can't do that. And then I did that, right? So it worked. Okay. Nice. So I ended up with 3 duplexes, got married. My wife and I lived in one of our duplexes, and she's a grinder like me. She's also Romanian. Interestingly enough, we were born about an hour away from each other in Romania. Oh, wow. And she moved to Michigan and I moved to Canada an hour away from each other, which was kind of cool.
That's crazy.
So we ended up, getting married, and she's American, I'm Canadian. And she's in corporate finance. She's a rock star. So it was kind of cool. We got married and just put our heads together and said, let's live like no one else today. You get guys saying, so that you can live like nobody else tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
So we kind of took that approach, and fast forward, we've been married now 10 years as of a couple weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations.
So, thank you. Appreciate that. So 10 years, and now we've built a nice little business. We have a mortgage company. We do wholesaling. I've purchased about 140 single family homes, which makes me the largest single buyer of homes in my city here. So that's where we're at, man. I got a great little team, great little company, and I'm the guy who says, how do you do it when other people say you can't do it, right? So,
I know. That was one of the things that was a huge takeaway from the things that I heard you say. That was one of them. And just talking to you, man, you're just full of energy. You're a great, humble, down to earth dude. And I was like, man, this dude he's a really good guy. So, that's another thing I wanted to get you on here is, you go ahead and you have all this great energy that you put off, and you put up, you're not just a guy that talks, but you actually do. So yeah, it's really cool to have
why that is. I'll tell you why that is. I'm reading this book called The Slight Edge, and it hits it like right on the head of the nail. Right, it's like the only thing you can really control in your life is your own attitude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if you have a positive attitude, if you're a giver, not a taker, like takers are people that waste your energy and pull you into negativity and do all this stuff. I find that the opportunities start to open themselves up the more you're willing to be the giver. Yeah. And the one thing I can control and give is a good attitude, right? So Absolutely. People say to me, oh, you have a good attitude because now you got a successful business and you have this. The reason I have a successful business is because I have a good attitude, right? So I feel for me, it's just, you have to make an effort. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy to me either. Sometimes I'm just like, man, crap, I'm down, whatever. But what's the point of having a negative attitude, or, you know what I mean? It's just, you're not going to be able to expand your mind, look at new opportunities with the contracting, with the scarcity mindset, live in abundance, live in joy, and then the money finds its way to you. That's the way I look at life.
No, I agree, man. I agree with you 100%, and you have a really great story of where you've come and where you are now. Let's talk about that. You've got your business going on right now. You've closed well over 150 deals here. How long ago did you start your business until, you've closed, nearly 170 deals?
Yeah. So I started aggressively in 2009. During the economic collapse or whatever, we were not insulated. Like, Canada is a little brother to the US. Whatever happens there happens over here, right?
Yeah.
So I had some family who bought a bunch of property in Phoenix back in 2006, 2005. And they were all saying, hey, we should all move over to Phoenix. It's the promised land. It's all this stuff. And I remembered one very specific thing from Warren Buffett, who says, when others are greedy, be fearful. When others are fearful, be greedy. Right? So I realized if everybody's running in that direction, I need to run the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So I learned that lesson, fortunately, before I had to feel that lesson, financially myself. So I had a bunch of family that, bought those properties. What happened in Phoenix, the whole market took a nosedive. It went to nowhere. So same thing happened over here. So in 2009, I'm shopping the MLS, looking at properties, because I was always a student, right? I'm always looking for different opportunities, different deals. So by the time I bought my first property, I bought those 3 duplexes in 2006. I didn't buy anything else until 2009. So 3 years of just learning and watching and studying, engaging.
Yeah.
Then I go and I find a property on the MLS. The whole market took a nosedive. properties in my neighborhood, let's say they're going about $100,000, $150,000 on average. I found a house for $25,000.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Nice.
Which I know it happens in the States, but in Canada, not so much. And I thought it was a typo. I thought it was something, something wrong. So I was actually in one of those 3-day seminars when I found that property. So everybody's like, who's got a deal? Show your deal. And I'm like, look what I found. I found this deal, right? So
Nice.
I basically recognize that, how much further can the market really go? We're either all going to go to hell in a handbasket, or at some point it has to reverse. And some of these elements in the economy have to turn back around and the market has to go up. So the way I started was I was just finishing reading that book by Robert Kiyosaki, OPM, Other People's Money.
Yeah.
So I literally went to my mother-in-law. We didn't have a whole lot of cash back then. Even though we tried to save everything we could, we bought those duplexes, we did some things. We didn't have a whole lot of cash. I went to my mother-in-law and I was like, listen, I need 25 grand. I need it really badly because I found an opportunity. And if I don't jump on this, somebody else will, right? And she was hesitant, right? She's like, what are you talking about? Because a few years prior, I was kind of known as like the get rich quick kid, right? I used to go around to, like, I did the multi-level marketing. I did all the different things. And I realized that I need those experiences, and everybody should go through those experiences to realize, number one, understand yourself, know who you are, what your personality is. But number two, if you don't look for the opportunities, you're never going to find them, right? So opportunity, I look at it today as skill meets chance, right? If I have the skills and I'm always honing myself, when the chance comes along, I can take advantage of it, called an opportunity. Yeah. Whereas other people, they see the same stuff pass them by and they never jump on it, right? They don't have the skills. They're not looking for it. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So I bought that property for 25 grand. That was 2009. I was there Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day with my father-in-law, my wife, my dad, and my brothers. We're all doing flooring. I didn't have a clue how to lay floor.
No.
I called a buddy of mine. I was like, listen, how do you hang drywall? He's like, oh, just grab some screws. Dude, it was the ugliest renovation you've ever seen. The ugliest. But what it did was it got me started. It got my feet in the ground to really get aggressive. So I bought one property. The following year, I did 10, right? 10 rentals. So I used the BRRRR method, right? People call it the buy, renovate, rent, refinance method. Back then, it was just called common sense. So it wasn't called BRRRR, So I basically BRRRR'd 10 properties in 2010. I was able to recycle the same group of funds, over those 10 properties. So within a couple of years, I had about 20 single family homes as rentals, so I was managing them myself. And it was always my philosophy to do the work up front, get a really good quality family. And then I figured that the maintenance and the management wouldn't be such a headache, which was true. Okay. Yep. So doing that because I realized I had a lot of other friends and investors who were buying the cheap properties, never doing anything, renting them. And then they would show up with their brand new Mustang on rent day and say, give me my money. Right. And the people would be like, well, I don't have it.
Oh, no. Jeez.
I feel there's a lot of common sense in this stuff. Like, you don't show up showing how lavish you are to somebody who barely has money to pay their rent. There's a good chance you're not going to get it.
Right.
So one of the greatest kind of metrics I used as a landlord was saying, I'm the manager. Right. I never came across and told people, I'm the owner. You owe me this. I said, I'm the manager. Work with me. And I was, because I was actually the manager on my corporation. So I would say to people, listen, we all have bosses. We all have people we are accountable for. We all have bills to pay. I understand you're having a hard time, but help me help you. Yeah. Right. Pay the bill. Give me whatever you got so I can put it towards, I'm managing this, right, on behalf of the ownership. Yeah. So I always use that strategy to just be humble. So that's kind of where the humble attitude came from.
Sure.
That kind of translated into having 20 rentals, and I would get some really good quality families in there. And I would ask, like, why don't you guys own a home? You're obviously a nice family, you got a good job, you got this. Then I realized that the mortgage conditions in Canada, just like I had a hard time getting a mortgage, so did everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So I said, we got to find a way. I talked to we got to find a way to create a mortgage company. And she's like, how do you need that? You need a lot of money. I was like, yeah, but there's a way. So for me, every time I have one of these questions, I put it into my subconscious and I just read and think about it until little bits and pieces start coming together and creating some kind of concept.
Oh,
that's awesome. Why I say everything is possible. People who say that you can't do this or you can't do that is because they haven't spent enough time doing those calculations to find out how you can do it.
No, I like that, dude. That's awesome.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, if I want to go to the moon, I'll go to the moon. I will literally fly out, find Elon Musk, do whatever I got to do, get on SpaceX, get my butt on that seat and get to the moon. Like, I'll just find a way to make it happen. It might take me the rest of my life, but I'll get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's that, that self-motivating belief that I can do everything I want to do because of where I come from. And I think sometimes the people here in Canada, they have kind of a spoiled attitude where they've never really gone through major adversity. So for them, it's almost like there's no drive to ever make anything significant happen, right? It's like they just get comfortable in a little bubble and they just live in that bubble, and it's just too hard to figure stuff out. So why should we do it? Right. So 3 years later, we were able to actually convert our rental business, which right now, the way I think about it, one of the smartest things I ever did. I said to myself, how do I keep the same income? I had about, let's say about 12 grand of gross income, about 3 grand of net profit at that point. Living in a duplex, I was financially independent, but didn't have any money. Okay, so if that makes any sense.
Makes sense.
So we were able to take that business slowly. We were able to sell each of those properties. And as we did, what we did is we actually brought in a financing partner. So we actually started selling them and offering vendor take back mortgages.
Oh, cool.
By splitting up the chunk of what we did, we were able to actually leverage the cash that we had, leverage the equity in the properties, because we had about $500,000 of equity between those deals, leverage that equity, put ourselves in a position where we could actually just hold mortgages on the properties that we had resold. So I did that once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. I got to a limit where I used up all my equity. And then I had to realize that I need to go and raise money. I need OPM. So long story short, over the course of basically 3.5 years, we've now done 72 private mortgages on fully renovated properties here in Windsor. So I now own the notes on 72 mortgage assets that produce between 25 and 30 grand a month of actual passive cash flow.
Nice, dude. That is awesome. That is great.
So that kind of gave me the leverage to kind of move forward. So now that kind of funds, some of our daily operations, some staffing and something like that. So it just came to asking a question: how do we do it? And how to move to the next level? We hit a roadblock financially. How do we raise capital? We did this. How do we leverage our assets? I'd call the bank and say, I want you to give me a massive line of credit, and I want you to secure them against my mortgage receivables. Like, that doesn't work. We don't have that product. I'm like, I know you don't have that product. If you did, then you would have given it to me already. I'm calling you and asking you, how do you get that product? Where do I go to get it?
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So anyways, we got 72 mortgages. The market goes up like crazy in my area. Canada is hot. It's on fire because of a lot of foreign activity. So what happened was the market was so depressed. My market is the cheapest in all of Canada. Okay. So imagine you live in Detroit and the rest of Canada is like California.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what my market looks like. So I have $100,000 homes. Everybody else is at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay.
Wow.
So
nice.
What happened was, as the market increased, a lot of smart investors would sell their properties from expensive areas like Vancouver, Toronto, and they would funnel that cash back into my local market here. So that jacks up the value of the properties even more. And then the biggest thing happening in Canada, which people keep complaining about, but it's such a massive blessing, is there's a whole Asian submarket like in China. They're basically doing a currency swap at the moment. I don't know if they're devaluating their dollar or the government has too many restrictions imposed on their income and so forth. What they're doing is just swapping currencies. So they're basically selling their dollar and they're buying Canadian dollar because Canadian is so strong via the real estate market. So what they do is they'll come here with $1 million that they have. They'll buy Canadian market and they don't care if they make any money on that money because they're not buying it for return on investment. They're buying it basically to secure and lock in their long-term wealth or their long-term capital that they've already got established. So as a result, what does that mean? They're overpaying, right?
Absolutely does.
They're overpaying because they're buying for different purposes. So a local guy will buy a property for 100 grand that's, let's say, worth 110. The other out-of-town Asian buyer is going to buy Vietnamese, whatever. They're buying it for 130 grand and they're paying 20 grand more than it's worth. But they don't care because as long as they put that money here, it's sitting somewhere. And eventually, over time, the value of those assets are going to rise. So then it's going to make sense for them. So however they manage to justify it, they're bringing us a lot of money. So market is shooting up. I'm buying a lot of properties, right? I had bought about 70 properties. Then I realized I can't find any deals on the MLS at all. Like the agent who I've been supporting, right? I basically put his kids through college. Because when you buy 75 houses with the same guy, he's doing pretty good.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, and one of the things that, you really showed, especially when you were doing your part of the presentation, I remember seeing it was your marketing. It was probably the funniest marketing I've ever seen, but you said the response rate was huge.
It was awesome.
So let's talk about the marketing that you've been doing to attract these deals that are to the source, and you're starting to get some good returns on them.
Yeah. So a couple of things. especially the Canadian market, I think we're very skeptical as consumers in this market, where maybe the US seems to be, I don't know if it's a larger market or they're just more accustomed to seeing that we buy houses cash signs.
Yeah.
In Canada, that doesn't really work. And I think probably because we're such a socialist economy that they really want to be wooed, and they really want to be, not only can you get their business, and not only just the transaction, but they also want something extra. So what I found was being super authentic and genuine in your marketing pieces really helped me stand out and get deals. So what I did was I actually created a flyer. A lot of guys looking to buy houses, they just put up bandit signs, whatever else.
Yeah.
I decided to create a flyer, and I put my dog on the flyer. I got this little cute little Yorkie. I put the dog on the flyer, and I put, Snickers buying houses, any condition, good or rough, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reasoning, and I didn't even know this at the time, but I didn't realize how many people actually own pets in Canada. Everybody owns a dog or a cat or whatever. They have that as part of their family. So it just completely shot out when people were calling me, oh, I want the dog to come and buy my house, and can you bring the dog over, and all this stuff. And it's these little things that you just don't even think, because I think we're so focused sometimes on being professional, we lose about being personable. I'm a funny guy. I like to have a good time. So I want to express that in the marketing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I had one of the clients I sold the house to. They had this beautiful little black baby, right? So in Canada, we're multicultural. My city has every nation you could want under the sun, which is great, because that's what makes Canada what it is. Such a beautiful country. So I said, hey, can I borrow your black baby for a second, right? I borrowed the black baby. They're in the house looking. I had my guy with me, and I said, hey, snap a couple pictures. Well, me and my black child got so many deals because I put it on a card saying, we help families, we buy homes, we got a mission. Here's my impromptu black baby that I grabbed. Let me go ahead and just put this back out. Well, I don't know if in the US that would be considered like socially unacceptable, but I'm in Canada. People are like, how do you get all these deals? I'm like, you got to get a black baby. Just get you a black baby, get you a dog. It doesn't matter what color the baby is. It can be white, Hispanic. It doesn't matter. My point is just show that you're the diversity, and just show your actual culture. So for us, the Canadians, we're so accepting of each other. It was natural for me to grab whatever is available and say, hey, here's what we are. Right?
Yeah.
So some of those campaigns have done so well, and people are like, I didn't even think about using a black baby. It's like, well, use whatever you got, right? Use what you got. If you have an animal, if you have, I think sometimes we get just too caught on like this is the marketing, and we forget that the marketing keeps changing as people's environments and people's attitudes change. So it works for me, man. So
did you give any perpetuity to the child that you used for your direct mail marketing?
Yeah, he's actually, I think we've got a scholarship set up for him for college. So we're going to give him like a percentage of sales, but we'd have to be able to actually track which ones came from the baby and which ones came from the dog. So we're split testing those. Nice.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So one key takeaway that I want to try and have folks get, especially from you being in a completely different country, not that it's like overseas and all that kind of stuff. You're just north of us. What would you tell to somebody that's brand new, that's just getting started? They don't have a game plan laid out yet. They don't have that mindset like you have, where, you're like, if you need something, you're going to figure it out by maybe, going on YouTube, maybe looking, reading books and figuring out a solution that way. They're just getting started. They might still have their 9-to-5 job. They don't want to take that plunge quite yet. Yeah. They're still, wanting to hold on to that security of a job. What would you recommend to that person that's still caught in that world?
There's two main things, and it doesn't matter if you're Canada or the US. And yes, our markets are actually very different, even though they're so close to each other. There's two main things that I learned. These are the most important lessons I think I've captured in the last 5 years. Number one, just get started. You got to do something, because a lot of people want to get all the information, all the answers, and they never do anything.
Right.
The problem I realized was this: information by itself is not enough. Everybody wants to read the next book and find the next strategy, and then they're going to be rich in real estate. But the reality is the information isn't enough. Otherwise, you can go to Google and find out all the strategies, right? But until you work in a business and until you go through the struggles, you don't really understand what it takes to be successful in that business. Grass is always greener, right? I want to go in a McDonald's franchise, but I have no idea until I go and work in a McDonald's to see what are the actual hesitations or restrictions or problems that every McDonald's owner has to face to even turn a profit.
Right.
So the first step is you have to just get involved and get started. The second one is this. I realized that I could actually get shortcuts in life if I just steal them from other people, right? Meaning that if I can pay somebody 10 grand and he teaches me a whole bunch of information that makes me $400,000 via a mentor. So my second thing is get a mentor. Like, I know it sounds cheesy. People are like, well, mentors just want to make your money. Well, mentors want to make money, period, because they're not going to do it for free. But number two, there's a lot that goes into mentorship that people just don't realize, that, you know, why a mentor would actually spend the time and energy to teach somebody else. So I hired Chris as a mentor, Chris Rude, right, who's now my actual partner. And the reason he's my partner is because I first met the man. I was like, dude, I will tell you exactly what I said. I don't know if this is a vulgar show or whatever, but I said, I might have an average sized, but I have massive. That's what I told the man the very first time I met him. And I told him that to say this. I don't need any hand holding. I don't need any coddling. I just need you to direct me in the right path. Help me understand the things today that would take me years to understand. Because had I hired a mentor years ago, honestly, I would have been a lot further along, I feel. So it doesn't take anything to hire a mentor. It just takes your willingness to learn and willingness to move forward. And I know there's a cost. I know there's other things, but that's it. Number one, get started. You can do wholesaling and keep your job. Nobody says you got to. The reason why I love this business is because you can leverage your resources a lot more than any other business. Like I used to do a lot of house flipping, right? I flipped over 50 houses, like full renovations, all that stuff. I realized that I've been leaving so much money on the table by not wholesaling all these years. Had I known about wholesaling 10 years ago, I never would have flipped so many houses. And instead of 100 and whatever, I would have been at 400 or 500 houses already flipped. So it's finding a shortcut, finding a better, more efficient way of doing things. I was already in the business. Chris helped me understand, hey, you're doing all this to make 50 grand. You can do this and make 20 grand in a fraction of the time. Yeah. I'm like, okay, return on time is more important here. Everybody says ROI, but ROI is relative to the time you have in the deal. Right?
Exactly.
So 10% a year versus 10% a month are two different numbers. So I think those are my two things. Get started. Just do whatever. Just get your feet wet. You know what I mean? Just jump in. Just get online. Ask questions. Get in the forums. Jump on. Find other people who are doing what you want to do and just ask them how. I think people are just too afraid these days.
I agree with you, man. I agree with you 100%. I think with the get started part, people overthink it. They think everything needs to be perfect. And I will tell you this right now, there is never going to be a perfect moment for you to get started. You just need to do it. And you need to do it without reservation. You can't overanalyze. You can't overthink it. You just have to do it. You know, having, a somewhat of a small plan. Yes, that's going to help you. It's going to help you stay, organized, and also on a schedule, because that's really important as well. Ben, let me ask you this, man.
Let me ask one more thing there.
Sure,
I just want to add one more little thing. The other thing is this. Everybody thinks real estate is a numbers business. It's not. It's a people business. So when you analyze numbers all day, every day, you're missing the whole point of real estate, because being really good at real estate, especially wholesaling, is all about serving people, helping people out of situations. So until you have conversations with people, you'll never know what opportunities are available. That's why I say get started. Start talking to people. Start letting people know what you do. Start trying to find people that you can help so that you can benefit as well. So that's where the analysis paralysis kills you, is because you're focusing on the numbers instead of the people.
Yep. I agree.
So by getting started, and that's where the skills come in. The better skills you have, the more people communication, the better you are. Sorry, I just want to add that in there.
No, that's good. That's good. Thanks for adding that in. So let me ask you this, dude. What has been a book that you would recommend, like some sort of a business book, leadership book, motivational book? What's been a good book that you would recommend that you've read recently?
The one I'm just finishing right now is amazing. It's called The Slight Edge. Okay.
Slight Edge.
I don't know have you read The Slight Edge?
I have not read it yet. I'm gonna have to get it now.
Everybody, regardless if you're in business or not business, you need this book, because there's very, very key fundamental principles in this book that if you just start implementing, it'll convict you, man. It'll give you some convictions about what you're doing in life.
Yep.
But the moral of the story is really, really simple. We all understand the compounding effect. I own mortgages, so I understand how much money I make in mortgages because of compounding interest,
sure.
right? It's the little things that you do each day that are going to define who you are 10 years from now, right? So like working out, for example, the reason people don't do it is because it's such a small little thing to spend 10 minutes a day going for a walk or lifting some weights. It's easy to do, but the reason people don't do it is because it's just as easy not to do.
Right.
But all those little decisions every day that they're going to add up. And what happens is you don't recognize the decisions you make today 10 years from now. If I eat a cheeseburger or do whatever else, but over the course of time, you're either going to start going up and you're going to become a lot more effective and successful, whatever, in every area of life, or it's going to be a gradual decline of your health, of your finances, of your attitude, and everything else. So I think everybody just needs to start with that book called The Slight Edge. Because if you can get that book, I mean, the sky's the limit. So that's one. And obviously, I got to plug my partner, Chris Rude's book, The Source of the Deal, the #1 wholesaling coach in the country, U.S. and Canada. Just because Chris is really genuine and he shares his story, right? So I love where Chris's heart is and where he came from. And I think that's what makes him such a good mentor, is because he started off just like the rest of us. And he's been able to apply things like The Slight Edge, in which he talks about in the book, and has allowed him to become uber successful. So those are the two books.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we had Chris on earlier. So yeah, we talked about his book and all that kind of stuff in an earlier episode. So awesome. Yeah, man, awesome. Definitely Chris was a great interview as well. Glad to have him on. Ben, if people wanted to get a hold of you, man, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
You can listen, if you guys just want to get some information and just get started, just find me on YouTube, Instagram, Ben Muresan, or Humble Wholesaler. I just keep it humble like Kendrick Lamar, right? That's actually my theme song until he's going to take me off of YouTube.
That's awesome.
Basically, yeah, so just find Humble Wholesaler, or you can just actually check out Chris's website, chrisrood.com, CHRISROOD.com, if you want to like book a call and talk about things more seriously. I am a Canadian mentor now. Now that I'm doing this business, we're doing about $100,000 a month in wholesaling in Canada. So nice. Anybody who tells me it's not possible, you just haven't figured it out yet, right? Yeah, so it's definitely awesome, possible. You can make a 6-figure business out of this every month, right? So my goal personally, like we did, we're trying to net at least $1 million a year just via the wholesaling model. Right. Yep. So I think this year we're going to be able to get there every year just with this. And then we've always got the mortgage piece and we've got the other flips and stuff. But just in the wholesaling, it's very viable. No,
that's awesome, man. That is great. And I appreciate you coming on and being a guest on the show. If you guys want to get a hold of Ben, just go ahead and find him on YouTube, The Humble Wholesaler. This guy's giving out tons of great content. He's doing great things in Canada. And, a lot of it, especially from the marketing standpoint, can be used here in the States. And bringing somebody on like this, is definitely something. Everybody always has a different story, but this is a really great story. And it's super impactful on how he was able to, basically live in a refugee camp. And now where he is today, he's doing really, really great things. I highly encourage you to go check him out, get some piece of information from him. Even if it's one tiny gold nugget that you could get from him, it could absolutely change your real estate investing business. But if you need to get a hold of us at all, you could reach out to us by support@jasonluchesi.com, and that's LUCCHESI.com. So support@jasonluchesi.com. Thank you for being here with us today, Ben and I on the show. If you enjoyed this episode with Ben, make sure you leave a 5-star review for us on iTunes, and make sure you leave us a comment. Those comments always are awesome to read from you, and I do go through each and every one of them. So go ahead, leave us a comment and that 5-star review, and we will see you on the next episode. Take care.